Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, February 17th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Moore. The Minnesota game is in 197 days. The game against Michigan in 283 days. Slowly, things are starting to return to normal in the world of college sports. The latest sign of that came over the weekend when the Best of the Midwest football camp returned to Indianapolis, bringing some of the region's top prospects into one showcase. Buckeye Scoop's Mick Walker was there to see it all in person. And Mick, first of all, how nice was it just to be scouting guys in person again?
It was good. I mean, I try and get out as much as I can. So I've had some other little opportunities here and there. Obviously, we made the trip down to Miami, which was awesome. But to actually see some guys that like directly at Ohio State's on was awesome. We'll talk about guys like Kiyunta Goodwin, who just sort of showed up and decided to work out later. Damon Moore was the guy that runs the camp, knows Mark and Bill, and then I attended for the first time last year. We actually sort of talked to Damon and got convinced him to come. So that was great to just actually see him live. And then I made another trip down to Center Grove to see Caden Curry. Just getting out and seeing some of these guys. And I did set out early last week to tell myself, I was like, I'm going to see every guy in the state of Indiana that Ohio State's offered one day. And I got it done, excluding Deshaun McCullough, who is moving to Indiana, but he's not officially there yet. But it was great to, like you said, get back out there and see some of these guys live. I like taking big trips because I know I get to come on the show with you, Tom. That's what I look forward to right after.
Exactly. That's all the hard work. This is the payoff right here. You are very welcome. Yeah, Deshaun McCullough, in case people are wondering, he's obviously was from Kansas before. His dad just took the running backs coaching job at Indiana, so he's moving to Bloomington, Indiana with his dad. So that's why Deshaun McCullough will be an Indiana prospect soon. One of the guys you mentioned there, you got to watch him. You weren't even supposed to be there. He wasn't even supposed to be there. Kiyunta Goodwin, offensive tackle target, who he is very high on Ohio State's board. You know, that is one of the axioms of college football recruiting. You always need tackles. No matter how many tackles you have, you always need more tackles. So what did you see out of Kiyunta Goodwin when you got to see him?
Yeah, I was going to see Kiyunta work out regardless because the plan was to go drive down to Louisville after seeing Caden and watch him work out. My original plan for the day was actually go see Deshaun at like 7, but that would have been waking up at 2 and getting home at midnight. So that was a plan that fell through. But as for Kiyunta, like you said, he showed up to sort of just support, like help advise some of the guys that he works with Aspirations Gym down there in Louisville. I mean, you see a guy like him that you train with, and he loses 126 pounds and picks up offers from all over the country. He's just a great motivational guy to have around those people. But once O-line started really getting into their drills, and you heard the final whistle saying, "All right, we're going to last session when we're going to one-on-ones," and you could just sort of see it with Kiyunta. He didn't want to sit there and stand, so somehow he was able to borrow some size 15 cleats and took off his sweatshirt, put on one of the pennies that they have, kept wearing his sweatpants that he showed up in, and took every rep. Obviously, there was some talented defensive linemen there. I thought Derek Shepard, 2022 Cincinnati commit, and 2022 Westfield High School product, Popeye Williams, who's another Indiana guy. He was there, and that was the guy that Kiyunta eventually took all the reps against. I'll have a video out of him tomorrow, but he took 6 reps and won all 6 reps against Popeye. And Kiyunta was just dominant. There was no real way of putting it in. I wrote about it. I played offensive line and defensive line in high school, so I don't want to call myself a savant, but I sort of understand the pass sets and everything. And the way Keontae's pass set was, it was just perfect. It was flawless. He was never out chasing a defensive end outside, and he was never slow in his pass set. So everything Popeye tried to do, whether it was get around the corner, work an inside move, none of it worked on Kiyunta. And it was just really great to see, especially considering he wasn't even really supposed to be there working out, to put on the show he did in 6 reps. I mean, you talk to other people around there you guys got running 40-yard dashes. You have a ton of different things. And Kiyunta taking 6 reps to become MVP of the whole event, really. And it wasn't honestly even questionable because he was just that dominant in that small sample size.
You always would love to see that kind of performance on the field. You also kind of like the mindset where it's like, yeah, I don't want to watch. Like, all right, let's go do this. That's got to be kind of one of those things that's appealing to coaching staffs as well. And he does have a lot of the very best programs in the nation chasing after him right now. So do you have any sense where Ohio State stands on his list right now?
I think it was a pretty big consensus going into the event between Mark, Alex, Bill, and I that Ohio State was the leader. And I just think he has family in Columbus. He's been a fan of Ohio State ever since he was a child, grew up idolizing Orlando Pace. He had different factors like that. And I think there were sort of some questions about maybe Louisville can get in there and challenge, Kentucky can get in there and challenge. But for the most part, it's Ohio State's got to lose. And I still feel that way, but it's going to be schools like Clemson and Alabama are coming into this and working hard to get to where Ohio State is because they know they can challenge Ohio State when it comes to offensive line prospects. It's just how it's been in the past. And if Ohio State proves they can land like guys like Kiyunta, it's how it could be in the future. I still come out of it feeling that Ohio State leads. I'm a little more weary knowing that Alabama and Clemson are really starting to push more. He pretty much outwardly told everybody that talked to him at the event that those are sort of his top three. I think Kentucky does have a strong lineage of offensive linemen. They could maybe get in there, but I still think it's probably those three, and Ohio State's at the top. Visits are going to be big for him. I mentioned in my Mick at Night piece that everybody can sort of read in depth about. But Kiyunta, like a lot of prospects nowadays, view this as a business decision with no personal effects really to it. Business decision where it's going to help generate and change not only his life but the life of his family. And that's why he's definitely going to wait to try and take all his visits to all three of these programs and probably more because he's going to make a well-informed decision. But like I said, there's a ton of factors that I think have Ohio State in the lead, and I don't see those changing. It's just Ohio State's definitely going to have to close strong and not just sort of rest on their morals here and just win this recruitment instead of just walking into it.
Another offensive lineman who you got to watch was Damon Moore. He's a 2022 prospect who sounds like he may be more of an inside guy, whereas Goodwin is a tackle. He may slide somewhere on the inside. What did you get to see out of him, and where do things stand between him and the Buckeyes?
Yeah, it's a lot. I know you're a big baseball fan. There's a lot of people. Everybody, when you're playing baseball, grows up wants to be the shortstop or the pitcher, somebody that's going to get the limelight. And I think that's sort of what Damon fell for at the camp. He wanted to be a tackle and took a lot of reps. Took a rep against Popeye. Took a rep against a few other guys. That you could see that he didn't have the speed or the movement and ability to contain those guys when they're coming in. However, when he did bump inside a guard, he took all three reps that I remember seeing against Derek Shepard, the Cincinnati commit, and every single one of those reps, excluding maybe one, he won pretty handily. And it was just, Damon is a very powerful kid. He just doesn't have that foot speed or that athletic ability to keep up with guys bending around the edge. But he could definitely be a very successful offensive guard at the next level. And I think he's somebody that Ohio State's sort of looking at, observing, still monitoring. He has an offer, but I don't think you call Ohio State commit right now. But that's fine. Hopefully we get some camps. There's definitely going to be film out about him, film out from his past junior season. Like I said, I'll have some film out. There'll be things that Ohio State can find and sort of observe through the spring and summer that they can see and take notes on him. But he was a very powerful prospect. He did great work at guard. It's just that's where he's going to be. And you mentioned it with tackles. That's what Ohio State needs this cycle. That's why they want Kiyunta. That's why they're looking at guys like you had on the podcast yesterday, Carter Smith, Emil Wagner, different offensive tackles like that. Those are what they're looking at. And I don't know how Damon fits in, especially when you look at Ohio State really likes their chances with a guy like Ernest Green out of St. John Bosco in California and Taylor Shabola likely being a guard. I don't know how Damon fits in this equation, but he's a guy Ohio State likes, and they're definitely monitoring. It's just there's some time to be settled out, especially since he's going to end up likely playing guard.
And another guy who Ohio State really likes is on the other side of the line, defensive tackle Caden Curry. He's someone I remember Mark Givler and Tony Gerdeman going to watch very early last fall and coming away very, very impressed with him. I don't think he played much, but it was like, yeah, he had 10 snaps and he forced a fumble and picked off a pass and blocked a punt. And it was like, whoa. So they were very impressed with him. It sounds like you got some of the same scouting reports from some of the folks you talked to there as well.
Most definitely. There's two guys I caught up with, Popeye and his father, and some more people around the Westfield program. It was actually who Center Grove played at the 6A division title last year. And I talked to Popeye. I talked to a few guys that just got to see Caden live and play against him and have to go against him. And it was just that he was tenacious. He's a guy that works very hard. He's a guy that everybody around the state of Indiana just respects for his talent. It's not a guy where they don't agree with the ranking. A lot of times you'll hear that with possible guys. He's not really the best guy in Indiana. People acknowledge and agree that Caden is probably the best player in the state of Indiana for the 2022 class. And it's not necessarily, I'm not going to say it's not necessarily close because I think Kiyunta is very high up there. But Caden, for the most part, was dominant last season, like you said. Mark and Tony had nothing but great things to say about him. I also talked to some guys from Cathedral High School in Indianapolis who won the 5A division title for the state of Indiana. And that was probably the team that had the closest game with Center Grove last year. And the coach flat out told me that he was wrecking stuff up inside, and they were struggling out there. It was just talking to people that had to watch Caden have to go against him. It was something they didn't want to talk about because the damage he can do. On the field, he's exactly what Larry Johnson's going to look for, and you could just see it from films. You hear how people talk about him. This is what Ohio State wants in their defensive tackles, and it's clear to see why he's probably number one on the board, on top of just being a Midwest guy, and they wanted to keep their best guys in the Midwest coming to a place like Columbus.
If you're wondering why Cathedral High School sounds familiar, that is where Pete Werner went to high school in Indianapolis. If that was ringing a bell and you weren't sure why, where do they see him fitting in? Are they looking at him as like a 3-tech guy or a nose? And he's another guy who's looking at schools like Clemson and Alabama. So what are their chances to land him wherever they would want him to play?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, 3-tech, 1-tech. You could obviously, if you wanted to, you could put him at defensive end. He's only about 6'4", 6'5", 250. That's why I thought I asked him what he weighs because he looks bigger, but he's only about 250. I still do think they'll put him at 3-tech. He probably comes into college around 270. You sort of worry about guys that come in over 300 pounds unless they're dominant. So you got no problem with Caden coming in at under 300. That's where I think they'd want to put him. And like you mentioned, it was funny. I even mentioned in the interview that I just dropped right before we started recording this. We acknowledged that all 4 of the teams in the college football playoff, he had offers from Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, all of them. They're all right up there probably. And he's going to reach the top 10, I think top 10, top 12 sometime soon. And those 4 programs are definitely on there. I think a team that's sort of pushing for him that would love to keep a guy like him home is in the Indiana Hoosiers after a season like they had. And he acknowledged seeing the Hoosiers and Tom Allen with their LEO mentality and everything having success last season was something he's listening to. But similar to Kiyunta, I thought Ohio State led in this one before I talked to him. I think they still lead now. It's just that they're going to have to get in a dogfight. He also has family in Ohio. I don't know how all these recruits have families in Ohio, but they seem to. He has family in Ohio. His mother's side of his family is living there. I believe Mark said it's in the Marion area. I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me. But he made sure to rock an Ohio State sweatshirt. He knew I was coming out. He's a guy that I think Ohio State should land, and they're very likely to land. It's just going to be a dogfight. And if they do, they're getting one of the best 3-techs in the country, probably.
All right, and give us one more name to keep an eye on, someone who jumped out to you maybe at the camp, because you obviously saw a lot of guys. We can't talk about all of them, but give me one more that someone who kind of jumped out to you.
Yeah, so Mark's wrote about him a lot because I saw Springfield the first game of the year. Anthony had a great game, and when Mark went and saw him against Springboro, Anthony also had a great game. Anthony Brown, a 2023 wide receiver out of Springfield High School in Springfield, Ohio. He was a stud all season for him. And then he came out, and he's always sort of had that label of being a speed guy, somebody that can run right past people, and that's what he was. And that's the Midwest. He was one of the 4 wide receiver MVPs. He looked a lot like how I looked at Caden Saunders last year, who I think you might want to ask me about later. He looked a lot like he saw last year when Caden was a junior. He was fast. He got by people. Dropped a 4.52 and a 4.59 in the 40, which is moving for a guy of his age. And I think he's a guy, Mark mentioned it, Ohio State wanted guys like Rondell Moore. They wanted guys like Wayndell Robinson, who's now in Kentucky. Somebody that can sort of play that slot, split out wide, running back role. That's a role that Anthony can play. And he's somebody that I think Ohio State's definitely going to look hard at for the 2023 class. You mentioned Cathedral High School also. I'll touch on Kendrick Gilbert, who was another guy that was a stud on the defense line. I think Ohio State will likely pursue as things go on with the 2023 class.
And boy, recruiting always makes me feel real old. I remember back in 2013 or so when Danny Clark committed to Ohio State, the quarterback, and he was committing for the class of 2017. And it's like, wow, 2017, we'll be living on the moon by then. And now you have a few 2024 guys on your list of guys who you were looking at last weekend, which was like, all right, man, like, come on, 2024. We really will be living on the moon at that point. One of those players is actually a teammate of Carter Smith, who was my guest on yesterday's show. You mentioned him earlier. You also did have an interesting note, yes, about Caden Saunders. He is a really speedy prospect out of Westerville, just demonstrated exactly how fast he is. He is currently committed to Penn State. What should people know about Caden Saunders?
Yeah, so obviously we're in the state of Indiana. As you do when you're just a media guy, you talk to other media people while things are dead or while you're just sort of standing around watching guys work out. I talked to some guys that cover Notre Dame, some guys that are just know also just know Caden, understand his recruitment. I think Penn State's going to really push to keep him. Obviously, I think obviously when a guy runs a 4.31 like he did at the Best of the Midwest, and yes, that was hand time, so take that for whatever you want to take it. But when you run a fast time like that, everybody in the country is sort of going to look at him. I think he actually just picked up a Texas A&M offer the other day. I imagine that'll intrigue him. But Notre Dame is a school that wants speed and a school that he is really listening to, and they're really on him hard. I think they could honestly have a chance to flip him. Penn State wants to hold on to him. Florida State, who he has a buddy, and Nico Marchagul, who is a quarterback out of Arizona that committed to Florida State. He's going to listen to what they have to say. There's a few programs that Caden's still listening to. Matter of fact, Ohio State actually did send him a short text after the camp, after just sort of acknowledging all the hard work that he put in to get to sort of the times and put up the results he has. Like I put in Mick and Knight, and I'll share it here. I don't see an offer coming there. We can debate that. However, I'm very close with Caden, so obviously I'd love to see him come to Columbus for guys like you and Tony to have a chance to cover him because he's just a great kid. But regardless, I think Caden's going to find a ton of success at the next level. And I hope he does because he's just a great kid, great athlete. And who knows, maybe Ohio State does make a move, but I just don't see it.
And we have spent this entire show talking about football, but you host a podcast called Anything But Football, where there is actually a whole lot to talk about in the non-football realm at Ohio State right now. You may have heard something about the basketball team being pretty good, the women's basketball team pretty good, the women's hockey team right now just came out yesterday, number 2 ranked in the nation. I understand you and Matt Goldman may have another episode of Anything But Football coming out pretty soon.
Yeah, it's sort of hard. Matt and I are both. Matt's a freshman at Ohio State, obviously, in case anybody didn't know that, and I'm a sophomore. So it's just hard. We went back in January, and we're still sort of adjusting our own schedules because Matt didn't move in until, I believe, beginning of February, late January. But we want to sit down. We tried to sit down last week and trying to find a time. We are going to try and sit down by the end of this week and get a podcast out for everybody. That I know we had a few listeners still trying to go to the listener base before we sort of took a big break here, but we're going to get another one out, talk some more hockey, talk some more basketball, everything like that. Because like you said, things are booming for the basketball Buckeyes, and maybe we'll touch on some recruiting there. I told some people on the board I'll hopefully have some more basketball for Mick at Night next week. But it's just I hear it every time I go out and cover Ohio State. People would love to be in our position covering the guys that get to cover the recruitments, the team, everything like that. And that's why we really started Anything But Football, because not only is Ohio State a great football program, it's a great program for all the other sports. And that's why people like you guys that listen to this podcast come to Buckeye Scoop, come to subscribe, come to get all this insider information. Tony's random rumblings, random thoughts, Tom's great content, pictures, audio, Bill doing whatever golf stuff, whatever time he can when he takes away from golf. Alex with his ADEX, who just dropped another great one for the National Signing Day stuff. Mark is always killing it doing articles, everything behind the scenes. I know I'm forgetting people in Nevada with the Nuggets, Ross with all his stuff that he does, and Kirk just being Kirk. I don't know if he still has a home yet, but he's a dude, and it's just a great time to be a Buckeye Scoop. It's a great time to be a Buckeye fan. I hope some people appreciate that because I know we always have a fickle fan base that sort of likes to nitpick, but it's a great time, bright future for every program around. And thanks for having me on, Tom.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. And yeah, this is a definitely, I mean, the football team just played for the national championship. Men's basketball team looks like they could very well be playing for a national championship in just a month or so. Women's hockey team could be playing for a national championship pretty soon. I mean, there is a lot going on. And you can find all of it, as Mick said, at BuckeyeScoop.com. He didn't really plug his Mick at Night there, but I will plug it for him. It is a more or less weekly column that is a subscribers only piece. And this week's focused on a lot of the events that we were talking about here, but had a ton of great additional information that we didn't have the chance to talk about. So make sure you check out Mick at Night, as well as all of our other great insider content there. Alex Gleitman, he mentioned it there. Alex Gleitman just dropped the second half of his, inside the recruitments of the 2021 class. We had Alex on last week to share some stories from previous years. We'll probably have Alex on to share a couple of those stories for this year's class. There was great stuff as always. I had people tell me like this is their favorite thing anywhere all year is Alex's inside stories on the recruitments of all these players. And those just dropped the last 2 weeks at buckeyescoop.com. So consider becoming a member there. Also, make sure you check out all of our great podcasts. Alex's podcast Around the Oval is always fantastic. Mick and Matt doing anything but football. Tony and I just dropped a new episode of Buckeye Weekly previewing the linebacker race for the spring for Ohio State. Man, there's a lot to talk about. There is no off season. There's never an off season. There is only Buckeye Scoop season. So check that all out at buckeyescoop.com. Also, you make sure you check out all of our great podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Spreaker, all of those places. Just search Buckeye Scoop. You find all of our great shows. You can subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating and review as well. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.